Well, good evening, Vacaville. This is the special meeting of the City Council of the City of Vacaville, August 13th, 2024. It's 5 p.m. And there's a nice echo in the room. It sounds pretty interesting in here. It sounds like I'm in a stadium. Anyway, at least we can hear it now. You hear it?
Why?
There's a nice echo in the room. There must have been a concert here, maybe. But with that, we'll go ahead and start with a roll call.
Councilmember Stockton?
Here.
Councilmember Silva? Councilmember Chapman?
Here.
Councilmember Roberts? Councilmember Wiley? Vice Mayor Ritchie?
Here.
Mayor Carley?
I'm here. Yeah. Vice Mayor is remoting in tonight, and so we have a quorum, and we will move on. We can open this up for public comment to begin before we start the presentation. Anyone wishing to speak on this, please come forward. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back to the council, and we will start with the presentation. So, Ms. Morris, why don't you kick this off? We're excited.
Good evening, Mayor Carley and council members. I'm very excited to introduce the Urban Land Institute's Technical Assistance Panel. We invited them here to Vacaville to help come up with some great ideas for downtown. I think they spoke with more than 30 Vacaville residents and business owners and property owners, and I am not going to steal their show. So what I'd like to do is introduce Kelly Klein, who's going to kick off their presentation. Thank you.
Great. Hold on one second.
Thank you, Erin, for the introduction. My name is Kelly Klein. I am a 30-year veteran of public service working in economic development roles in the Bay Area, and currently work for Stanford University on their local government affairs team. I first wanted to start by saying thank you, in particular, to Mayor Carley and Councilmembers Silva and Ritchie, who spent significant time with us over the last couple of days. But thank you, City Council, for having us to Vacaville, to the City Manager and Aaron Morris and the Community Development team, and most importantly, the citizens of Vacaville and your great institutions who are so passionate and involved and who welcomed us with open arms and shared with us our hopes and dreams for the downtown. I'd also just like to take a second and recognize two ULI staff members, Joy Wu and Lola Motley, because we could not have done this without you. So thank you so much. And now, if we can advance to the next slide, I'd like to just acknowledge the amazing professionals who are serving on this panel. I'm not going to read all of their names. They're going to introduce themselves as they present different parts of this presentation. But what I would like you to know about all of them is that, including myself, we're all volunteers. And we cross both sectors, public and private. We have decades experience between all of us working for, in, and with downtowns. So we are all incredibly passionate about this work. And with that, I will go on and tell you a little bit about the Urban Land Institute for those of you who are unfamiliar with it. ULI, let's advance to the next slide, was established in 1936. So it is a long-standing institution. It is a nonprofit education and research institute. Their mission, this is no small thing here, but they want to shape the future of the built environment for transformative impact in communities worldwide, including Vacaville. I added the last part. They have 40,000 members worldwide, and over 2,000 of them are here in the Bay Area, and we represent the San Francisco chapter of the Urban Land Institute. The program that we're here representing today, if you could advance to the next slide, is called a TAP, or what stands for a Technical Assistance Panel Program. Our job is to provide independent, objective, candid advice on important land use and real estate issues. Our process is pretty straightforward and tried and true. We spend 2 days in a community. We go deep. We do independent research. We interact with stakeholders, the 30 plus people that Aaron mentioned. We take an intensive tour of the location, in this case, your downtown. We do independent analysis, and ultimately we will produce a very detailed report that you will have by the end of November. And today, what you get is a pretty comprehensive teaser of what our analysis showed and what kind of broadly our recommendations will be. So if you could advance to the next slide, this is just showing, in fact, we actually were out in the downtown. We brought gorgeous weather with us, and it was quite pleasant and wonderful traveling about your downtown, which, by the way, we absolutely thoroughly enjoyed. And if you go to the next slide, this is the name of everybody who talked to us on Monday morning. We got tremendous feedback, and you will, although we're not attributing comments to anyone, I'm sure you will recognize, certain themes and sentiments that are reflective of your downtown stakeholder community. So thank you to everybody on the slide. Many of them are here tonight, so thank you in person, and then thank you to those who are watching on Zoom as well. The next slide shows the three important questions that were given to us by staff. This was our assignment, and I'm going to just go ahead and give you kind of an overview of these questions. The first one is, what will it take to spur existing property owners to upgrade their existing buildings, and what can the city amid other partners do to support that action? Question number two is, what are the most cost-effective approaches to seismically strengthen buildings downtown that are considered to be unreinforced masonry buildings, or otherwise known as URMs? You will hear that acronym a lot tonight. And number three, approaches for non-URM buildings in order to facilitate new uses, in particular food and beverage uses on the ground floor or residential uses on upper floors. So that is what we were commissioned to do. So next slide. A bit of framing before we dive in here. We see our job as not only answering the very specific questions that you provided to us, but also to help bring your new downtown specific plan to life and your downtown vision to life. It's really hard when you have something that's two-dimensional on paper to figure out how you put wind in those sails, and that is what we are hoping to do today. There's a lot of interrelated issues with those three questions that we're going to cover that cover everything from streetscape to marketing to, there's going to be a number of things that we're going to cover that might seem like they're a little bit out of scope, but are actually thoroughly integrated. And for our purposes, we focused on maybe what you would consider to be a smaller boundary than your typical downtown boundary. We really focused our attention on Main Street between Davis and Dobbins. And we'll see some images of that framework later. And then we also think it's important to set a little economic context. I'm sure that you are not surprised to hear that the economy is really tough for new development right now, or really any kind of development project, retrofits and otherwise. This is not a Vacaville problem. It is a problem that cities are struggling with across the nation, if not globally. And so, we just want to make sure that you understand this is a larger phenomenon. And this time that you have right now to plan and to get ready for the next up cycle is really important. And a lot of our recommendations are kind of focused on the short term of what you can do to get ready. The good news is that there is a lot the city can do. And I think it's important to note that you are starting from an incredibly strong place. You have what I would consider to be enviable assets. You have fantastic buildings. You have phenomenal political leadership. You have great committed community stakeholders, many of whom are here tonight, and you have, maybe most importantly, momentum. So in terms of our agenda for tonight, we're going to do a short SWAT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We are going to do a deeper dive on historic buildings. We are going to talk about placemaking and streetscape, housing, if not for the short term, definitely for the mid and long term, marketing and vibrancy, And then finally, we're going to break our recommendations into 3 categories: short, medium, and long term. So you have a sense of prioritization and timeline for that. So let's move on to the SWOT analysis. We will start with, if you can advance to the next slide, strengths. One more. I love this picture, not just because I took it, but because I think it is just, this is the gateway to your downtown, the old Opera building. It shows that historic character, the hometown atmosphere that creates authenticity that you just don't find everywhere, right? You have an exceptional downtown with a vibrant event scene. Thank you to the Business Improvement District. You have a very well situated town square. You have stakeholders that are absolutely committed to making downtown grow and succeed. It's walkable. And the city has made some really key investments that are going to be incredibly helpful for what's next. Next slide. There are also some weaknesses. Downtown can feel a little disconnected, which isn't your fault. You have a major interstate that kind of runs through the middle of town, but it can be a little bit unclear to the passerby, where to find downtown. Like a lot of downtowns, you're struggling to find the right mix of tenants. It's hard right now. Retail is going through a radical reorganization, and leasing environment is tough for a variety of reasons, economic and otherwise. We talk to a lot of people who are struggling with code compliance in the entitlement environment. That also is not unique to you. I think this is a universal struggle, but it is something that was prominent in the comments that we received. There is a perceived lack of parking. We might try to debunk that a little bit tonight. We might going to poke on that a little bit, but perception is reality to a certain extent. And so we thought it was important to acknowledge it on this slide. And there's also a lack of destination tenants that maybe kind of create the draw that you need for your downtown. And we will talk more about housing rental rates, which might be stymieing a little bit your ability to start more than just the one development that you have on track right now. Next slide is opportunities. Your surrounding demographics are respectable and they are improving. If they're going in the right direction, so that is excellent news. It's an opportunity. Your downtown offers something that Amazon cannot provide, which is that historic context, unique uses. That is incredibly important. There are many ideas for outside activation. You have a city who I think really is willing and wants to play that ambassador role in helping projects get across the finish line. And so we have some specific suggestions about how to build on that desire. There are new incentives coming in compliments to the city manager on embracing the storefront grant pilot program. I think that's going to be a tremendous asset. And then obviously wayfinding and access incredibly important to downtowns, and that's an opportunity for this one as well. And the last but not least, it's important to be looking around the corner and knowing where the threats are. As I mentioned before, there are larger economic trends that are making development difficult. This is an important line: risk plus time plus cost. It equals an equation that is not working right now. And to a certain extent, we have to wait this out. There is a feeling that was expressed by a number of the people that we talked to about feeling stuck. Our goal tonight is to help get you unstuck. And I think everybody desires that future state. And that's good news. Staff may not always feel empowered to make decisions, but hopefully this kind of process and others to come will change that feeling. It's important to note that leasing in particular is a competitive business. You've got places like Fairfield nipping at your heels, right? So you kind of always have to keep that threat in mind. I think it actually helps us all do a better job. Residential is appearing to be easier outside the downtown than in it for reasons that we will explain later. And then, of course, leasing impediments are, cost, time, all of the usual things there. The good news is that all of these are overcomable. None of these are going to stop you. They're all things that you can address. So we're going to get right to it and address the important questions that you raised for the panel, and start with historic fabric, buildings, and approach to URMs.
Thank you, Kelly. Hi, my name is Ruth Todd. I'm an architect and a planner with Page and Turnbull, an architecture and cultural resources planning firm that specializes in the revitalization of historic buildings and places. And this team has been laser focused on your downtown for the last few days, and we've learned a few things based on a little bit of research and a lot of listening. Next slide, okay. One thing we've learned is that for a long time, I think since the early 70s, downtown Vacaville is considered to be an official historic district with about 30 buildings that have been identified at the state level as historic resources that contribute to the unique architectural and historic character of downtown. Historic status provides access to funding and code relief opportunities. The next slide, please. And one more time. Yeah. So a subset of these historic buildings, more than a dozen, are unreinforced masonry buildings. So we heard that owners of URM buildings in Vacaville feel threatened by a new ordinance that was adopted last year to improve life safety in a seismically active state in a region with poor soils that may not respond well to earthquakes. This ordinance has requirements that practically every jurisdiction in California has. So it's not something unique that's been imposed on Vacaville. But property owners are rightly worried about how much these life safety improvements might cost. And it's a very legitimate concern since the costs of these improvements will likely not be covered by the rents that are currently generated in these buildings. Next slide. So we suggest that the historic status of your downtown buildings can be leveraged and incentivized, and that URM code upgrades should be prioritized as the first wave of strategic reinvestment in downtown. So we're suggesting a list of tools that include a few of these that I'm going to go over. One is that the city and property owners of URM buildings could cost share what's called a Tier 1 structural assessment of all the URM buildings in downtown. This would be conducted over a period of 2 to 3 days by a structural engineer with experience well-versed in historic buildings and construction methods. Tier 1 assessments identify the basic needs of structural reinforcements and categorize life safety risks on a scale of 1 to 5. This information could then be used to provide conceptual cost estimates for each unreinforced masonry building, and grant funds, the FEMA grant funds, could be targeted for seismic strengthening of those buildings that pose the highest risk to life safety. The city could also adopt a Mills Act program, which would initially target URM buildings and eventually all historic buildings in the downtown that might need expensive code upgrades. The Mills Act allows property tax relief to those historic building owners who agree to reinvest in their buildings. Historic buildings can also use a different section of the building code that can provide code relief, not just for seismic, but for requirements that are often triggered by a change of use. And that's been a challenge here. So the use of the state historical building code and negotiating seismic and code relief can be confusing to figure out. So we recommend that someone in the city become an ambassador to help shepherd some of these projects forward through the planning and building process. Lastly, some of the buildings downtown would qualify for federal or state historic rehabilitation tax credits, which would allow for a tax credit, not a tax deduction, but a credit of 20% of the cost of rehabilitation, which includes hard and soft costs. So that's a very significant incentive that could be available to some of these property owners. So it's not just as a preservation architect, but the entire TAP team is certainly excited about the potential to leverage historic preservation as a very significant economic development tool for downtown Vacaville. And Ryan's going to talk a little bit more about that.
All right, we're trading cards here. Great. My name is Ryan Call. Thank you for your time. I'm with Urban Field Studio. My background is 20 years in architecture and urban design, focused on retail and entertainment districts. Oh wow, you skipped to that one. Good. All right. So it was great coming to Vacaville. And one of the first things I felt was it's the right size. Retail districts all across the country, the good ones are about 1,000 feet, and you're at 964. So that's really close. We looked at Winters, they're kind of walkable 2 blocks is like 855 or so. The Solano Mall's 1,000. These are really good dimensions of, for a person of all ages to enjoy a retail district from one end to the other. So that's a huge plus. What we want to do, though, is make sure that we concentrate the activity in that zone as much as possible so that it feels vibrant, so that the people that are in the district help enliven it. I think the next big idea is we want to focus the investment on taking that physical realm, that public realm, to the next level. We want Vacaville to be everybody's first choice when they go out for retail or their entertainment dining needs. And these are all, why are we talking about placemaking with the URM exercise? We need to bring those customers to the storefronts, to the front doors of those businesses so that there's interest in making the investments and bringing those buildings back to life. So it's a partnership. The last part is keeping those investments focused on this core district will help the money go further, and it'll help the cumulative investments deliver a bigger impact. So if we go to the next slide, what's really impressive, though, about your downtown is the neighborhood it's in. We did some really nice walking tours in the district, wonderful architecture. There are people from all walks of life, which is really impressive. So you have a downtown that is extremely well positioned to be activated by this community and potentially increase its relevance to the community by expanding some of the tenant offerings and the public realm experiences. The other really great thing is you have some built-in anchors just by their character. The library flanked by the post office. The architecture of those 2 buildings are one of a kind. It says Vacaville. There's nowhere else on that. That's really great. And the fact that the library has been repurposed for food and beverage is incredible. It's so unique. At the other end, you have Andrews Park, and so many cities, they try to put the big event space right in the middle of the retail. And what it does is it pushes the retail all apart, and it dissipates and it loses its energy. Vacaville put it as an anchor, which is really cool that you can have a programmed event that's big. You can still have your intimate retail district, but you have this amazing Andrews Park as an event space to activate your downtown, but not get in the way. So there are a lot of really exciting things. I love the subtle jog of the main street when you're coming from the east to the west, and you see the Opera House right there and a little trash receptacle, which could move over. But really, what a cool city. Next slide. So this is where my brain lives. It's like, okay, let's look at that 1,000 feet. And how do we make that 1,000 feet really count? And it a lot of times comes down to what are the public realm touch points? What are the things in the first 12 feet of that space that your community is experiencing that makes them want to come back and come back and come back again? And the neat thing is, and you see this in a lot of retail districts right now, is it's not one note. They have several public space experiences that are diverse and distinct, and the combination of those events coming together make a more interesting destination and something that you might come to for different reasons or for different people to come to for different reasons. So we've done this little sketch. We looked at your downtown specific plan, which is pretty phenomenal. And one of the things we absolutely loved was the pedestrianization of the last block of Merchant Street. It's this really cool visual destination as you're driving up Merchant Street. And then, your town square is this great space, but it's kind of a formal space and it's a flexible space for a lot of different things. But there's this opportunity to make the Paseo this very cool, community dining room. like activate the ground floor of the triangle building so it spills out onto that paseo space. It's only 60 feet wide, so you get a more narrow, intimate dimension, and it's flanked by historic buildings. So really cool space. The other thing we studied was looking at the town square. We had a great discussion with your youth commission, and I asked them, do you guys really hang out at the town square? Is that like one of your first picks? And they're like, no, because they didn't have, there wasn't a boba place, there wasn't the kind of tenants on that square that appealed to hanging out for young people in general. And so it triggered the conversation and thought in our mind that maybe you diversify the tenant mix on that town square to attract a broader spectrum of people. And then also create the continuity of having two small tenants so you're bridging the east and west sides of that plaza with a more continuous retail experience. So great bones. I think there's tremendous potential, not with huge moves, but with small moves. And all of those forces will work together to help support, attract better tenants to your district and invest in those precious historic buildings. I'm going to hand it to Mariana, where she's going to dive into some of the details.
Ryan, thanks all for having us. Excuse the switch. My name is Mariana Ricker, and I'm a landscape architect with SWA Group. We're a relatively large-scale planning, urban design, and landscape architecture firm, and I work in all types of public spaces, including a lot of streetscapes. So when we're talking about Main Street, you'll hear us continuing to repeat this. We feel like you guys already have such a great basis for investing in your downtown with the historic facades, the mature tree canopy, and just a really comfortable width for the street. Our team really doesn't feel like you need to reinvent your streetscape section, and instead just build on what you already have and enhance things with a couple strategic improvements that really focus on pedestrian comfort and safety. One of those things is thermal comfort, particularly in an outdoor retail environment. Having cool, shady spaces for pedestrians to walk under is really, really key to activating those spaces year round. The trees are pretty far apart right now on Main Street. That was one thing our team noticed. And so with just a few parking spots switching over to planters, you could infill with additional street trees in order to get more of that shady environment across the street. This also builds in natural tree succession as some of those older trees begin to age out. And combined with maybe over time, replacing some of the sidewalk paving, you can bring down those urban heat island effects even further. And then really continuing what has already been started, whether that's enhanced lighting or wayfinding and signage to connect users from Main Street to parking, or improving the existing street furnishing, just continuing to build on that as needed across the length of Main Street, but then focusing on these key moments like Ryan talked about. When we think about a really dynamic district, it doesn't have to be large, but you want to get that diversity of uses within a tight area. And one of those is this paseo by reclaiming the end of Merchant Street. There's already some active uses there. Heritage House, we saw a bunch of people waiting out in front of, and that was just a Monday morning. So supporting those existing uses and also encouraging investment in buildings like that incredible triangle building, this space would be an opportunity to really frame a unique community gathering and dining hub, and have that be a gateway. As you're coming up Merchant Street, that's your gateway to Main Street and your gateway to the town square. And that's kind of the benefit of this historic fabric, is it's just naturally a comfortable pedestrian scale space. So leaning into that and really providing a unique experience for your community. And then the square itself, again, this is an existing, maybe more formal gathering spot, and it's in the right place. It's also kind of the perfect size for the scale of the downtown, but it needs activation. And that could start with pop-ups, that could start with umbrellas or fun furniture, or kind of just anything to breathe a little bit of life into the space in the near term, with those users that maybe do attract some teenagers or young families, complementing the existing buildings and businesses around the town square, but providing something new and something interesting that people will kind of discover and want to come back to. And then over time, it probably will need to be updated. And when that redesign happens, really honing in on how can this be a flexible space that does have all that infrastructure and support for when there's a larger gathering, but works for the day-to-day users is what this is kind of all about. And keeping that energy focus back on Main Street and in this central historic core. That's what will attract the visitors, and that's what should attract residents from all over Vacaville. So with that, I'll pass it to Dawn to talk a little bit more about housing.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Don Capobres. I'm with Harmony Park Development, and I'm a residential, retail, and mixed-use developer. Over 30 years, I've developed in small towns and big cities here in California and nationwide. We know that population and residential drives retail, and Vacaville has rooftops with over 100,000 people and growing. You know how to incentivize housing production as evidenced by one of the most efficient and unique housing elements that I have read this entire cycle. Kudos to you and the team for getting that housing element certified by the state so quickly. That housing element is planning effectively over 2,500 new homes over the next 8 years. What about downtown? Park 700 is a great addition to downtown, obviously, and it serves as proof that new development may be viable in downtown Vacaville. In addition, downtown already has a great mix of affordability presented through a spectrum of building types ranging from bungalows to exquisite Victorian homes. I missed the tour, Mr. Mayor, I apologize, but they came back raving about it. It will, however, be difficult to construct high-density development in downtown Vacaville in the foreseeable future. It isn't surprising to me that the Park 70 project is being delivered at the density that it is. Lower density housing is really the only program that's moving forward from a new construction standpoint at this time. Low density housing is consistent of wood construction. It's self-parked. It avoids expensive structured parking. High density, on the other hand, is hard to pencil today, not just in Vacaville, but in a lot of California communities. To drive this point home at a very high level, I put some numbers together to kind of show what the deficit might be. So a vertical mixed-use development today, cost to construct per square foot is about $645. In Vacaville, the expected local value per square foot would be $390 per square foot. So you can see there's a deficit there. On the other hand, townhomes, the cost to construct it would be around $320 per square foot. And locally in Vacaville, we expect local sales prices to be $400 per square foot, which obviously is a positive difference when compared to the more high density program. One suggestion might be looking at that CVS site and potentially reducing the targeted density for that in the near term to be able to attract some interest on residential development. I'll turn it over to my colleague Tracy.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tracy Flanagan, and I'm a partner with Community Strong Strategies. We're an economic development and community engagement firm that specializes in PBID, bid, and nonprofit capacity building. So I'd like to take an opportunity to just run through some of the great things that we saw. So first of all, you all should be very proud. First of all, you've got a bid in place. So that's step number one. So glad to see that. And you have an excellent new executive director in Leslie, so thank you. And in addition, you currently have 11,000 followers on your Facebook, so all outstanding. Now here comes the opportunity. In terms of the funding to your bid comparatively to other bids of similar size and activity, you're probably funded about 50% lower than it should be. And so, to be able to carry out the level of activity that we would want to see with a downtown bid with this number of businesses, would highly encourage you all to take a look at funding to be able to support not only in maintaining the current activity level, but increasing it. The opportunities are there. So let's look at the opportunities to invest additional investment there. Another key element to your marketing and vibrancy is really a much stronger coordinated effort between your three marquee business organizations, your BID, Visit Vacaville, and your Vacaville Chamber of Commerce. In partnership with your city staff, there's a tremendous opportunity to align communication and really help to educate your constituents as well as visitors about why they want to come to downtown Vacaville. So would love to see a great example would be a centralized calendar where all of those organizations plus the city are feeding into one central place. So you have that opportunity to, if you want to come to downtown Vacaville, here are your opportunities. In a situation like this where you don't have a tremendous amount of funding, it's very simple to use creative grassroots marketing opportunities. And we're going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about driving foot traffic. One tremendous opportunity for community engagement is as you are looking to develop additional wayfinding opportunities and sharing about event cultivation is soliciting additional community engagement from your constituents and having them be part of the process. So that's a tremendous opportunity that you all have. And then as it relates to the grassroots marketing opportunity, Vacaville, you have a lot of tremendous local vendors and merchants and manufacturers. So having them, I think our colleagues, Ryan and Mariana talked about, the pop-ups. Let's utilize those as an opportunity to showcase those local artisans who represent Vacaville, and let's have them represented in downtown Vacaville. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Danielle.
Mayor and Council, thank you for having me tonight. Danielle O'Leary, 20 years of economic development public service experience, now working for the largest real estate investment trust in the world, actually. So I'm bringing both the private sector and the public sector to you tonight. What we're going to focus on is the recommendations here that we've discussed. I think the most that we would like to communicate is really in the short term, right? These are high impact, immediate things that you can do to activate the downtown. And so we'd like to just kind of quick hit through these and then leave time for questions. So the first is in the historic piece, which is really what brought us here to you. And one of the top recommendations is really to designate a development facilitator or a single point of contact in the city who can help individuals navigate how to invest and upgrade these properties. It can be confusing and overwhelming, and so there's an opportunity cost when it's too difficult. So having a point of contact that can help serve as an ombudsman and a guide. Second is levering off of the recommendation from Ruth around the URM Tier 1 structural assessment. Really digging in and understanding what the costs are so you could put that up front and trying to take out some of the mystery, but also inform your prioritization. Really focusing your resources on what is most critical to tackle first. Next would be to explore and discuss and educate teams on the historic building code benefits. How do we unlock some of this value in these buildings? How do we utilize the historic building code to help advance investment, encourage investment, and get some code leniency? So we recommend exploring that. Mills Act analysis. This really is one of those key economic development tools using historic preservation as a way to build and unlock value in your downtown. When it comes to housing, really trying to start focus on connecting your existing neighborhoods into downtown. How do we get people out of their houses and into our downtown having a good time? So really looking at ways that it's a combination, could be programming, wayfinding, tenant mix, but really trying to make that draw. And then creating some fanfare and public awareness around 700 Park, the groundbreaking, showing that the development is happening and really trying to build like the catalyst project that this is to encourage and bring more investment into the downtown. Next is placemaking, which is really around enhancing how it feels when you come and visit your downtown. So streetscape, trees, bike furnishing, amenities that encourage people to linger and stay and spend time and hopefully money with downtown businesses. Pop-ups in the town square. So initially, we're really advocating for small moves, inexpensive things like tables and chairs, umbrellas that really activate your town square. Bring the activity there, create that third living room where people can hang out and enjoy the downtown. Continue with the art programming, building off that, create unusual, neat cultural art programs that draw people and create a physical connection to your downtown. And then we like this idea with the Historic Council or the Heritage Council, really around celebrating your historic buildings with the QR codes for the historical markers, almost like a historic walking tour where guests and visitors can learn about these great buildings and why they're so important to the streetscape. And then lastly, marketing and vibrancy. So celebrate the local artisans that are here that are uniquely Vacaville, and give them a space to market themselves. Also, one thing to consider would be familiarization. They call them FAM tours for short, where you invite social media influencers, travel writers to come and feature the town, spend time in the town, and go back and bring audiences, their audiences, to your downtown. Inexpensive, relatively easy ways to build that awareness, that third-party affirmation that this is a fun place to visit. Identify increased funding streams for the bid. You heard our counterpart here, Tracy, mention that we would love to see some capacity build there for events and marketing. So looking at creative ways to bring more money into that organization. Strengthening coordination and communication amongst all the stakeholders, message alignment, agreeing upon kind of where you want to go and making sure that all the groups are kind of saying that in unison, singing from the same book helps create and stick the message. So creating that alignment. And then utilizing current city databases, both of business owners and property owners, to get that word out. You have a built-in database to communicate these messages to and the importances of why people need to come downtown. Next slide. Midterm is the 2 to 5 year focus, and I'm just going to touch on a few of them. We just want to reiterate the prioritization of the FEMA funds. City staff did an amazing job of building an outside capital stack to be available to your businesses to try and upgrade these buildings. So we want to encourage that to continue and to help prioritize which are the ones that are most important for the development. Institute a Mills Act program for the city to help people have access to unlocking value, whether that's code leniency or grants or reimbursements. Looking at your housing, you have an amazing downtown specific plan, which creates all sorts of incentives. Market that. Let people know how that saves time, reduces risk and cost to draw that investment. Consider density reduction on the CVS site was also discussed. Placemaking, really, we want to highlight the dining district, strengthening the dining district, creating that there, the Y to come down in the Merchant Street Paseo. And under marketing and vibrancy, reconsider the PBID formation. That could be a way that you look at additional funds coming in to fund some of these core things you want to accomplish. And then long term, well, you know, a lot of things can change in the long term. And so you may be making adjustments to these pieces, but we really are excited around the tools that historic preservation can create in an economic development based incentives. So we really think that that is something that we should spend time on and really figure out how to get that unlock what we want to see with these buildings that are sitting vacant, right? How do we use these rules and these grant programs to make these things that we want to see happen? Seek opportunities to assemble larger sites when it comes to housing. The 700 Park Project is a perfect example, CVS, and looking at that density, but finding more opportunities to bring that housing downtown, build in that customer base. And then when it comes to placemaking, looking at, we started with, you know, the pop-ups, right, in the short term, inexpensive, but ideally we'd love to see these convert into permanent kiosks and structures that help program your square. So we really want to reemphasize, we think that that is very important. And lastly, under marketing and vibrancy, just reiterating, like, creating downtown champions, word of mouth, people who can really speak from a personal, authentic space about why they love here and why you should come here. And then obviously the continued expansion of your bid and relying on your bid networks locally to figure out ways to partner and bring in that business attraction. And I'd like to thank you so much for your time tonight. And with that, I will turn it back to Director Morris. Thank you.
I hope the council enjoyed the presentation. Staff and the team are here to answer any questions that you have. Just as a brief recap, we will receive a detailed report from the Urban Land Institute by the end of November. So that will be coming back at a later time. But we're happy to take any questions you have.
I'm having a technical difficulty here right now. I've got can't see who's wanting to speak, so I'm gonna go ahead and start by just saying, first of all, thank you. This was a wonderful experience the last few days. Your approach to building some stakeholder informed responses here tonight was very well, I think, orchestrated and planned, and a good way to quickly get to the sneak peek, if you will, to what's coming. I, for one, am very excited, and I know that as a city, that there's so many things, and it is true that just hearing some of the comments, there's some really neat ideas in here. The Paseo, fabulous, a boutique hotel, bring people downtown, and it's really the goal of how to get people to be a part of what we want for downtown, because it is a beautiful place. It really is. And just hearing your stories and your ideas and the diverse backgrounds that you all bring. And again, trying to get past some of the challenges that we've had with the URMs and I heard the term, codes, the code leniency. We have to find ways that say, no, this is where we need to be, but here's what you can do. But to be able to leverage a way to bring someone in to really look at all of them. So we need a good strategy, and we're grateful, Morris, for bringing them to us. We know that you've heard from this council the desire to do it and to lean on experts. We rely a lot of times on consultants in government, but to bring a team of experts in all of you is fantastic. And so I couldn't be more excited. I do have a question, but I'm going to go ahead and let Councilmember Silva make his comment.
Thank you. So just as quick as I can, were property owners engaged as part of the process? I didn't quite catch that.
Yes, we about 32 people were interviewed, and they consisted of property owners who own URMs and other property owners as well.
And then, so one thing I want to clarify. So I've heard different things on the cost of vertical mixed use or townhomes, and particularly townhomes. I hear they don't pencil out. So this is kind of contradictory to kind of the conversation that I've been hearing the past couple of years. So how is that determined? How do we process?
Councilmember, I'm Don Capobres, and thank you for the question. And I do apologize if I was confusing. It's townhomes that do pencil out now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Other developers in the past for other projects where we champion townhomes.
Yeah, lower density. I know Park 70 is more of a detached, kind of smaller home project, but they're relatively the same. And the key variable there is that they're self-parked. You have a garage that's going to house the bulk of the parking, and you don't have to build very expensive structured parking that's out of concrete. Some pricing that we have kind of in the Bay Area for how much it costs for structured parking can range from kind of a low of $30,000 per space up to $75,000 per space going downwards. And so that's why townhomes and the density can be 18 units per acre and lower is a program that is actually pretty active in Northern California right now. The home builders are out there looking for sites for those types of projects.
To put it a different way, because we don't lose development space for actual structure, because the structures are actually accommodating the parking space, that allows more space to be utilized for building structures rather than parking space.
That's part of it, but it's really avoiding the really expensive cost of building underground parking under a building, or structured parking that's built out of concrete or steel. That's the biggest cost savings. Townhomes, single family homes that are detached are built out of wood and does not rely upon concrete or steel.
Thank you for elaborating. Other question I had was, it was stated that 50% comparables to other bids is 50% underfunded. And those other comparables, how is that broke? What are they investing in with that additional 50% that makes them possibly more effective?
If I can get me to stay. Councilmember Silva, so your programming is set up appropriately, and so essentially it would just be to increase the level of programming that's taking place. It's not necessarily to redirect those funds. One of the other challenges that happens with smaller size organizations like your bid is that you'll have one person on staff. And that one person really needs additional assistance, whether it be on a contract basis or on a part-time basis, to be able to fully execute the full portfolio of programming that you want to see. So that additional funding would go to just supplement your current activities and make them more robust, as well as provide additional support.
What would be, I'm looking for some more concrete, so maybe it comes later in the month, but when you say level, increase the level or more robust, like what would be an example of that?
Additional events. I mean, being able to, have stronger coordination, like the activation that we talked about in terms of the grassroots placemaking. It just takes a lot of manpower. The FAM tour that was referenced as one of the short-term goals. There again, those are things that you really just need to have additional support personnel to be able to make those things work. And that's why having additional funds, particularly as it relates to either part-time contract support, is so helpful. Leslie's one person and is also a small business owner. And so it's really challenging for that person to be able to do everything that they have to do for their small business and then for the bid.
So one quick clarification.
Sure.
So if all costs are equal, is it more beneficial to the long-term effects to have more events, or have, let's say you have 6 events versus 12 events? What if those 6 events have maybe like higher caliber, well-known folks that double the turnout from the public? Is that more advantageous, or is it more advantageous to have more diverse
It
events
depends,
throughout
and I
the
think
year?
looking at your assets, we didn't have enough time to really dig deeply into those assets. But one thing we did hear loudly and clearly from the stakeholders that we talked to, that a stronger coordination amongst the types of shows that are being provided, utilizing, your VPAC versus you've got Journey, then you've got the park. Maybe looking at a more synergistic way to utilize all those assets in the best possible way would be your best short-term solution.
Okay, and one quick question. Thank you so much.
Sure, of course.
And quick question about signage. Is that something that's going to be included in the final report? Signage, like for the no, like building signage. Like for example, photo booth, the photo studio. They have a signage that has like some backlighting to it, so at night it like illuminates, so it adds to the ambiance of the night vibe.
That's getting into the really fun stuff, which is the details of the buildings and the expression. We were focused more on how do we increase investment in the URMs and stimulate those environments, but those details can make or break the right physical environment, public realm. So it's really good to pay attention.
But in fairness, like if we don't have the structures not stable, then
yeah.
I think I actually think the storefront grant program that you have coming into fruition here is a place where that might be able to be addressed. Storefront could very well include signage, and those would be the priorities that you'll have to figure out. It's like you could probably do 20 signs, or you could do 2 storefronts, or maybe you do a blend of both, right? So when you get into the details of how to implement that program, that can address probably some of your signage needs.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Chapman.
Thank you. Thank you for the very informative presentation this evening. I have a question. I believe Ruth Todd had addressed cost sharing. Now, with the cost sharing, how can we, with public funds, assist in the cost of refurbishing, rehabilitating, or with the private property owners? How is that addressed? How is that done?
Councilmember Chapman, I believe you're asking about public funds triggering prevailing wage. Is that your question?
Funding a private study.
She had mentioned initially the property owners whose property does not meet code, and they may not be financially able to take on that added expense to bring it up to code. I think during the presentation, you mentioned later about FEMA coming in or using FEMA funds and Mills Act and all of that. But before then, on your slide, under cost sharing,
it was for the
Tier
tier
one
one
assessment.
seismic assessment. And I think that specifically the second question of the TAP was are there ways to be creative about shared approaches to buildings? I think there was a question about, could adjacent buildings seismically strengthen to the benefit or, cost-effective manners? So there's a desire among the owners of these buildings to figure out if there's an efficient way to collectively think about the challenge of seismic strengthening. And there's a fear, everybody thinks it's going to cost $1 million to strengthen their building, and that is not going to be the case for every single building. And maybe it's not. It's probably more like it's probably less than $1 million. There might be a couple of buildings where it's going to be an expensive endeavor, but nobody knows, and there's this uncertainty and fear. And the way to get past that is to do this first pass assessment where you get a structural engineer, probably from a small engineering firm, that does this on a regular basis and can come in with there's checklists and forms that suss out the information that a property owner needs to know to decide whether they've got a small project on their hands or a big project on their hands. And it would be very efficient to hire one structural engineer or, one or two to come and do a blitz couple of hour visit. They could go in for an hour or an hour and a half per building, and you could probably knock out all of these investigations over just a few days. And then they submit their checklist or they write a report, and a cost estimator or maybe somebody in public works or the engineer themselves could say, you're looking at a project that's going to require this type of intervention for seismic strengthening, and it's going to cost in the range of X dollars a square foot, as opposed to, this unknown number that people are dealing with now. And it's possible that city funds could help, and property owners could pay a pro rata share of the time for this kind of tier one assessment.
The premise of the FEMA grant that we have made it through the first round with, and we're still responding to FEMA's request for information, is that we're actually relying on structural assessments that were prepared in the early 90s. These are the ones that were done back when the city had to evaluate existing URMs.
Yeah.
This recommendation, which identifies the type of assessment we need to do and how to approach it strategically, is one of the biggest things I was hoping to get out of this advisory work, because we've been kind of working with what we have, but I feel like there is this opportunity for a more strategic approach to, as Ruth says, just really demystify for people who are kind of freaked out about how much it might cost and really get to the bottom of it, because it will vary a lot. And that's even true with the structural assessments we do have from the early 90s. It does vary a lot from building to building as far as what needs to be done.
Yeah, and this is how institutional property owners like universities, the University of California does this approach to figure out the order of magnitude to develop their capital plan and their schedule for seismically strengthening their buildings. So if you take that institutional property owner approach to a downtown district, even though you've got different owners, you could still look at it the same way, and they could get the information they need to figure out, how much assistance they might require to help move things forward. But it's kind of like, this theme of people being stuck. This is a really good way of getting that conversation out to alleviate some of the fears that people have that are keeping them stuck.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Wiley.
Just one quick question was about the parking, because that always comes up. And the perception is we don't have parking, but it sounded like we do have more parking than some people think we do. So is it fair to say parking is not a red flag right now for Vacaville downtown? Okay, well, because our time is up,
This is a great question, and through our feedback, we actually heard different opinions about parking. So it's worth recognizing some of the concerns that we heard, which is if people are using the street parking, they feel a little safer because the storefronts are on the street. The people are on the sidewalks. There's more activity going by. If you're parking behind the buildings, it's really important to have lighting and is kind of as much brightness as possible at night, so that those environments feel safe to go to, and that there's very clear signage that gets you to the retail environment that you're headed. In terms of quantities, the data suggests that in a quantitative form, you've got plenty of parking. And I think there's a real strength to providing people open to air surface parking behind the buildings like you have. There are a lot of cities that have done this very, very well, and it's easy parking versus going into a parking garage, climbing up ramps and backing out with columns and all that kind of stuff can sometimes be a deterrent. So I think there's some challenges that you can totally address with pretty minimal investment. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stockton.
First off, I just wanted to thank you for coming down here, visiting our wonderful city, and giving us a place to start. I think one of the biggest frustrations that we see is when you have that many different business owners and different businesses there that, that serve different, industries and have different goals. It's really tough to figure out how we can unify people and just even get started and where to do that. So I'm really excited that you came here. Very fortunate. I enjoyed the conversations we had at the Main Grape with some of you, and I'm looking forward to seeing your report. I really like some of the stuff that you brought up today. I have a lot of homework to do myself to research some of this stuff and see how we can help provide opportunities for these business owners to come into compliance and be able to, fulfill their dream. Like if they have buildings that have opportunities to advance their businesses and, or their restaurants and the different things that are going on downtown, we want to see our downtown thrive. So I just really wanted to thank you for coming here today. Really excited about what you're talking about doing and looking forward to reading all about it. So thank you very much.
And Vice Mayor Ritchie, you're on the line. Any comments or questions?
I see the time signal too. I'll make it fast. Thank you, team, for coming down. I really appreciate everything. Everyone's comments were amazing. I kind of echo that. I think the SWAT analysis was really exciting. Watching the energy from the people that have no vested interest in the city but came here on their own accord to really step up. Your energy and your explanation of your SWAT analysis was really nice. I love the Paseo approach and how we can really activate the downtown. I love the fact that you saw something about it in a triangle building as being another way to have a kind of a way into the city. On the seismic engineering, that's a great opportunity. I think when that does happen, if we can kind of make sure that the time is spent well, And therefore, when they go to each of these buildings, they can give these property owners kind of a breakdown. Hey, here's the options. If you want to turn this into a retail, restaurant, or residential, here are kind of the big three kahunas that you could repurpose this building and the possible cost. I think that's really key. So they can say, the highest and best use might be going residential and retail, or residential and a restaurant. I think them seeing that flow chart in not just one option, but three options could really help them make that educated decision to activate the downtown. But thank you for your time, team.
Yeah, thanks, Vice Mayor. And just final comments. I've often said this: Vacaville is not just a place; it's a feeling. And you graciously came to us, and we're certainly thrilled to be in partnership with you. Looking forward to what this report's going to help give us some good substance in making these decisions to do what it is that we're all wanting. And it is our living room. And we want Vacaville to be the place where people come, but we want people to come to downtown Vacaville as their first choice and not think of other cities. And we all know where people go, and we want that for our own. So we certainly are encouraged by your presentation tonight, and thank you for all the work you've done so far. And looking forward to the final product, which won't be the end, it should be the beginning for us. So thank you very much. And with that, we're going to close this special meeting and adjourn. We will take a few minutes before we start our regularly scheduled meeting. So this meeting is adjourned. The regularly scheduled meeting for the City of Vacaville City Council meeting, August 13th, 2024, 6 p.m. Do I have a roll call?
Council Agency Authority members. Stockton.
Here.
Silva.
Here.
Chapman.
Here.
Roberts. Wiley.
Here.
Vice Mayor Ritchie.
Here.
Mayor Chair Carly.
Here. And if you're able, please stand for a moment of silence.
Yes. Ready? Go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And any changes to tonight's agenda, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item 8A, the first public hearing item, is going to be pulled off tonight's agenda and continue to a future meeting date. And then just for presentation purposes tonight, we're going to combine items 9B, C, and D into one presentation because they all represent the same project, just different actions. So it will be one presentation with multiple recommendations and actions from the council.
All right, with that, motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
A motion and a second. Since we have someone online, our vice mayor, we're going to have to do everything tonight. Roll call.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Yes.
Member Stockton.
Yes.
Councilmember Silva.
Yes.
Councilmember Chapman.
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts. Councilmember Wiley.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ritchie.
Yes.
Mayor Chair Carly.
Yes. And with that, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion? Motion and second. Roll call.
Councilmember Stockton.
Yes. Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Roberts. Wiley.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ritchie.
Yes.
Mayor Chair Carly.
Yes. All right, we have no presentations tonight other than the one that we just experienced, which was a great one. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. We have items A through E. Any member of the council or the public wishing to pull an item for discussion? Vice Mayor Ritchie, just checking to make sure that you don't want anything pulled?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Approve consent calendar.
Motion and Stockton second. Roll call.
Councilmember Stockton.
Yes.
Silva.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Wiley.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ritchie.
Yes.
Mayor Chair Carly.
Yes. With that, we'll move to item 7, business from the floor. This is the time that the public can bring any issue that's not on tonight's agenda that is in our jurisdiction. Up to 3 minutes to share. Please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. Not just civil libertarians like myself, but citizens depend on a fair and accurate democratic elections to choose their representatives. Sad to report that Solano County has dirty, inflated voter rolls. This report is only regarding Solano County. In 2016, Solano County had 111% voter turnout. Normally, the very best is just under 80%. Solano County was one of 5 counties in California that sued by Judicial Watch for dirty voter rolls. Judicial Watch prevailed. February 2024, California Secretary of State is being sued for not correcting the inflated and invalid voter rolls. Most of the data in this report is cross-referenced with contemporary official USPS records. Invalid addresses, 60. Registered at commercial addresses, 31. Registered at a P.O. box, 14. And by the way, I could live in Nevada and have a Vacaville P.O. box and still vote if we allow this. Vacant addresses, 45. Moved out of Solano County, but within California, many of which registered to vote in their new county, 1,035. Moved out of California, many of the former Solano County residents registered to vote in the state in which they moved. 1,029. Keep in mind, this is not all. This is just what we could finish by August 8th. At present, there are 2,214 voter registrations in Solano County that have been challenged. Why this matters to the city is we'd like to know that our representatives are actually voted for by the citizens in this community. There are more voter registrations that we were unable to get to by the deadline of August 8th. We did not examine voters that are deceased, nor did we, and excuse the terminology, but is the legal term, and I'm bound to use it. We did not examine illegal aliens that are registered to vote. The voter registrar, the registrar of voters, the board of supervisors, district attorney, and the county clerk have been informed. What this means, any candidate that suspects that their election was tainted has legal standing now and the right to FOIA election data and ballots. So to my point there, this brings me to the question, who are our legitimate representatives? A pundit commented, Jiminy. What this does not mean is that an election will be overturned, nor does it mean the registrar of voters was negligent. The state of California, the legislature in Sacramento have put hurdles in his way for him to clean the rolls. And I think the city of Vacaville should take a stand and demand that its citizens have a fair and free election. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I enter this into the record or comments from the floor?
Yeah, pass it over, yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Good evening.
Hello, everybody. I'm Pam Schechter. I'm the secretary of A Hand Up, and we have been having the Homeless Roundtable. And I am here to officially beg all of you to come to our next Homeless Roundtable. We've had a really good turnout, but it would be so much better if we had the backing of the city of Vacaville. We meet the third Wednesday of every month at 1 o'clock. So that would be the 21st for this month. And the next meeting, we're going to have the director of the social services building come and the director of behavioral health come and speak to us. And we would love to have you there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Where is it?
It's in the social services building.
And just for a point of understanding to the public, an invitation to the entire council would be inappropriate for the entire council to show up in order to just listen to something. Oftentimes we coordinate, who can come to a meeting so that we don't violate the Brown Act if it's potentially given direction from the city. So we just have to make sure that we follow that. Good evening.
My name is Gail Thompson, and I'm also here concerning the Homeless Roundtable. I would like very much to have a crew come and attend one of our roundtables as guest speakers. The crew doesn't get the recognition or the credit that they so rightly deserve. They're on the ground, in the field, every day, working with our homeless. And many, many people have no idea what they do and the good job that they do. And since the Supreme Court ruling, things have changed a lot. And I think that having a member of the crew come and discuss it with the group would be extremely helpful. And unfortunately, it is from 3 to 5 on the third Wednesday of each month. And it is at the Bill Carroll Center. And again, I would very much like to have the crew as a guest speaker, perhaps in October, so that they can just review what's going on with the city of Vacaville and how we're addressing our homeless and the work that they're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Skip Thompson. I want to take this opportunity to talk about a few things. Obviously, the Supreme Court decision has turned everything upside down, to say the least. And I don't think the governor's executive order has helped anyway. So I'm here to ask the council and the city manager, what is currently the city's policy as it relates to homelessness? Right now, it appears that sweeping the park rides is your policy. And that policy is not going to work. And it really is detrimental to the efforts that your partners are trying to do. We don't just feed the homeless. We work with them to get their SSDI, what helps them to get housing. We take them to medical appointments. We assist them with those sorts of things. When you sweep the parking lots, they're scattered throughout the city. It's very difficult to help them in the different things that your partners do. The other issue is, I heard just the other week, is that you're all familiar with the regional housing needs allocation. Every 8 years, the state says, here's the number of housing units you need to place in your community. Well, the idea that's being floated right now is use that same sort of formula as it relates to homelessness. And I will tell you, as an elected official, I didn't like the state mandating programs to those of us at the local level. So I'm encouraging you to work with your partners, the homeless advocates, the NGOs that have some expertise, and maybe we can get ahead of this before we start looking at mandated homeless housing. So I look forward to a discussion on your policy as it relates to homelessness. We'd like to be included, if you don't mind, to talk about things that we advocates and NGOs can provide to help the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, I'm going to go ahead and close the business from the floor. And just in the interest of the audience who's here, when are we going to have that update? Because that was postponed for good reason.
Yep.
It's not.
So we were tentatively scheduled for the same date that they were meeting. Right. So we actually now have a August 29th is the next planned opportunity for the homeless update that we plan. And that's where CREW and all the other agencies that are involved with the subject of homelessness from the city will be presenting an update on our efforts with regards to that subject.
And that'll be where? In what?
Here in the council chambers at 4 p.m. More noticing will come on out in the future.
Great, thank you. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and move on. We're skipping 8A, so we'll move on to the public hearing of 8B, resolution submitting the annexation of territory and levy of special taxes on CFD 12. And for the audience, this is the public hearing proceedings for the annexation of the territory to the city's Community Facilities District Number 12, Police and Fire Services. And the hearing is to inquire into the annexation of territory and the levy of special taxes in the annexation territory for the purposes of financing municipal services. If anyone wishes to file a written protest, they must file it with the city clerk now before this begins. And is there anyone in the audience that has any written protest? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and begin this hearing. And we're first of all going to start with a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. Our item tonight, as mentioned, is a follow-up to the June 25th resolution of intention to annex the Vacaville development, also known as the Peabody Road Apartments, into CFD number 12. And this is the 5th annexation into that particular CFD. So starting off with some background on CFD 12, this district is also referred to as the infill district because it was formed with the intention of annexing previously unincorporated, undeveloped areas within the perimeter of the city's existing boundaries. CFD 12 was formed in 2006 for the purpose of funding the full cost of providing police and fire services within the district. And tonight's action refers to annexation number 5 for this district. Previous annexations included developments of Benton and Ivywood, Sterling Chateau 2 and 3, North Village Unit 6, Farmstead, and then most recently Montesa. The Vacaville development will include 120 multifamily residential units, and at full build out based on the fiscal year 2025 rates, the development would generate approximately $113,000 annually to provide for police and fire services to the area. This map shows the area petitioned to be annexed into CFD number 12. The tan shaded area shows the parcel that will be developed into Vacaville. The region is bordered by, to the north by Cliffside Drive and directly to the east by Peabody Road. Costco's to the west, and then Wolseywood High School is also labeled to the south for reference. So this slide goes over the steps to annexation. The first item on the list is adopting the resolution of intention to annex the property, which was completed on June 25th. The boundary map was recorded following the meeting and is available for reference in the attachments to tonight's staff report. Tonight, the agenda includes the items listed in the second bullet point, which is holding the public hearing, which we're doing right now, conducting a special election of the property owners, declaring the results of that election, and introducing the ordinance levying the special tax within that district, including the annexation area. The final step is scheduled for the August 27th meeting, and this will be the second reading and adoption of the ordinance, which we'll be introducing tonight. It's a short presentation, and that does conclude it. Be happy to take any questions or comments.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions from the council? Vice Mayor Ritchie, do you have any questions?
Not at all. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and open up the public to receive any comments, questions, protests. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public hearing. And with that, if there is any discussion, we can have it now, or we can go ahead and move forward. So we have a motion. We have a motion and a second. Roll call. Yes.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, you're just adopting the resolution, and then we'll do the ballot.
That's right.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Yes. So this is just adopting this first step, which is the resolution. You want to go ahead and read it? I can go ahead and read it. It's right there.
Motion to approve proposed resolution number 1, resolution of the City Council of the City of Vacaville, permitting annexation of territory and levy of special taxes to qualified electors as described.
All right. So that's the motion and the second. Roll call.
Yes.
Councilmember Ritchie,
Yes.
Councilmember Silva,
Yes.
Councilmember Chapman, Councilmember Wiley,
Yeah.
Councilmember Roberts, Mayor Chair Carly.
Yes. All right. With that, we will.
Chapman.
Sorry. So we have everybody? All right, so the motion passes. So in anticipation of this election, the ballots have been completed by the property owners in the annexation territory and submitted to the city clerk. At this time, I ask the city clerk to open the ballots and announce the results of the election. So this would be our deputy city clerk.
All results are in the affirmative.
All right, with that, the results of the election being unanimously in favor of the proposed annexation and the levy of the special taxes, we will now proceed with the final actions for the Community Facilities District. So with that, we'll consider the adoption of the following resolution. We have that up on the screen. Any questions from the council on this one?
Proposed resolution number 2.
We have a motion. Okay. Councilmember Wiley is the second. And this is the resolution of the City Council of the City of Vacaville declaring the results of the special annexation election, determining validity of prior proceedings, and directing recording of the amended and restated notice of special tax lien. And with that, roll call, please.
Councilmember Stockton,
Yes.
Silva,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Wiley,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ritchie,
Yes.
Mayor Chair Carly.
Yes. All right, thank you for the short presentation, and we will move on.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me.
Yes.
You need to introduce the ordinance. That would be the final step.
Oh, that's right. I must introduce the ordinance. All right. So I don't think I have that on my sheet here.
I could pull it up on the PowerPoint.
Could you do that?
Yep.
All right, so this is the proposed ordinance. So to introduce it, what are you asking me to do? We just passed it. Just read it?
You just needed a motion to introduce the ordinance, and then you need a vote of the council.
Ordinance? Okay. Roll call?
Councilmember Stockton? Ritchie?
Yes.
Silva?
Yes.
Chapman?
Yes.
Wiley?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ritchie? Mayor Curley?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so did we accomplish that correctly?
Yes.
All right. It's complex, so let's just make sure we do it right. We don't have to come back and redo it. So thank you for keeping that in order. Now we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. This next item before you is a rejection of bids for the Trower Park Landscape Improvement Project. Brian McLean and Brian Oxley are here for a presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. Tonight's presentation is going to be conducted by our Assistant Director of Public Works, Brian Oxley.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. The item being brought before you tonight is the Trower Park Improvement Project. The Trower Park is located on Markham Avenue between Rocky Hill Road and Meadow Drive. 6 neighborhood parks were approved by City Council to receive park improvements. The improvements for each of the parks were identified in the Park and Recreation Master Plan, and then redefined by Parks and Rec staff based on feedback received from neighborhood residents. And Trower Park is one of those 6 neighborhood parks. Staff was directed by City Council to modify the Park Master Plan with specific instructions that included creating a theme for park through colors and nature, and incorporating community art through murals and decorative tiles. And the proposed amenities for the park are included in the items here shown on the slide. On June 22nd, 2021, City Council approved initial funding of $1.8 million of Measure M funds for improvements at Trower Park. On May 24th, 2022, City Council approved an additional $700,000 of Measure M funds. An additional $98,120 was included in the fiscal year 2023-24 annual CIP budget approved by City Council on July 27, 2023. And this increase was based on an updated construction estimate that was prepared by the architect at that time. And finally, on April 9th, 2024, City Council approved an additional $684,500 of Measure M funds. This increase was based on recognition of the over 9% increase in construction costs as reflected in the California Construction Cost Index published by the California Department of General Services. And this brings a total Measure M funding to $3,282,620. As was just stated, at the April 9th City Council meeting, Council approved the additional funding to finalize the improvement plans, advertise, and construct the project. As staff worked with the architect to finalize the improvement plans, there were some remaining items that needed to be addressed prior to advertisement, and both of the issues had to do with the topography and elevation changes of the site. Amenities needed to be rearranged as to avoid spending significant funding on retaining walls, and pedestrian passive travels were reevaluated to meet ADA requirements. Once the improvement plans were completed, staff advertised the project on June 9th with a scheduled bid opening date of July 2nd. However, due to lack of project interest by contractors and in an effort to solicit additional bids, the bid opening date was extended to July 16th. 2 bids were received, and the lowest bidder was Lister Construction with a base bid of $2,823,100. And this base bid amount is $600,000 or 26% over the engineer's estimate. Based on the bid summary information just presented, Three alternatives will now be presented to council. Alternate one, shown here, which is not recommended by staff, is that council could accept the lowest bid and award the project. And council could award the base bid or a combination of the base bid and additive alternates 1, 2, or both. If council chooses this alternative, council would also need to authorize the allocation of additional Measure M funds in the following amounts to construct the project. There would be an additional $450,000 for the base bid and additive number 1, $478,000, base bid and additive number 2, $590,000, or base bid and both additives 1 and 2 for $618,000. Another alternative number would be to reject all bids and not build the project. Again, this is not recommended by staff. Alternate number 3 is recommended by staff, and it includes rejecting all bids and re-advertising the project. Staff would include additional additive alternates in the project, which would allow the city to include additional scope to the project should favorable bids come in. Staff has had conversations with some of the contractors and bidders and have come to a consensus that advertising the project this coming November or December with a bid opening date of January 2025 would be the best opportunity to obtain the lowest bids. With this advertisement date and bid opening date, construction would begin once weather permits and most likely would be April or May of 2025. And finally, staff recommends that by simple motion, City Council reject all bids for the Trower Park landscape improvement project and direct staff to re-advertise the project. And this concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And for the purposes of this, we'll go ahead and ask the questions first. Councilmember Silva.
Just a quick question. Just a little bit elaborate a little bit more on the fact that so we approved funds about like 3 years ago, and looking at the timeline, what's kind of just help me understand how to communicate to folks like the how it's been, how come we haven't gone out to bid like 3 years ago essentially. Like I mentioned, as far as like advertising more, so like what were some of the pitfalls this time around of why maybe we weren't able to advertise more?
So just recently, after myself and one of the project park managers came and requested those funds, staff went back, and as I'd mentioned, there were some changes that needed to be made to the plans based on what the architect was finding. And in an effort to try to reduce some of those costs, some of the changes that were being made were to remove retaining walls and move some of the amenities around on the site. And so that took additional time. And then also they were reevaluating the ADA paths of travel.
So I guess I'm confused. And so when an architect comes out, do they visit the site and kind of see the layout? I guess I'm just ignorant on how come these things aren't identified earlier on versus later on.
I'm going to step in here real quick. One of the more global concerns is we had 6 parks being remodeled at essentially the same time. All 6 of those parks came online in terms of their project status during the COVID in 2020. Limited staff, supply chain issues, funding issues. There was a myriad of different issues that conspired to slow down some of these things. And you'll see that over the last few months in this particular fiscal year, the department is starting to churn those things out because it took time for it to work through the system. And now many of those parks that we started and were funded in 2020 are finally starting to come to you for acceptance. To your question, yes, the architects do come out, the engineers come out. There was many different public meetings that were held specific to this particular park. Elevation shots, ADA, all those things are evaluated during those particular periods. But that doesn't negate, in the end, we have constructability issues that need to be analyzed. And there was a concern from the architect that with the number of amenities, the placement of the amenities, and the topography of this particular area is challenging. And what we wanted to avoid at all costs were issues where we would have ADA accessibility issues throughout the park, locations where individuals had a hard time or would not be able to access. And so the architect took it upon himself to ensure that the city was being provided with constructible plans that were something that we can go out to bid and be sure of that we would meet full ADA requirements.
So that's usually like that level of detail is not done initially, and that's like question one. And then two, those reevaluations, are we paying more for those reevaluations throughout that process?
No, we did not pay additional monies for them to do that.
Okay.
No. Those were things that had been looked at. When staff looked at them again this past year, and again trying to look at cost savings, and as Director had mentioned, making sure that we had paths of travel for ADA compliance, we saw some significant issues
And just
that needed to be addressed.
Not to comment too, I know we're asking questions, but wheelchair access for kids was something that was echoed by other youth. So I do appreciate that extra effort to make sure we get it right. So.
We can facilitate this discussion. So the architect he takes a shot at something. So we come up with a master plan, and then he translates into construction documents. We submit it to city staff, including the building department. In this case, the building department routed it to a third-party reviewer, 4Leaf. They provided comments that the architect had to respond to. One of the comments that they had was because of the substantial grade issues that we have at Trower Park, we needed to prepare a geotech report if we were going to move forward with some of the improvements that we had, and specifically in the locations where we had them. So we had a shade structure that was proposed where we had to fill to flatten that space out. And if we were going to move forward with that, we had to go back and get a geotech report, which we already knew that we were struggling financially to move forward with the improvements themselves. So we decided to forego that by moving the location of the shade structure. So sometimes the revisions that come as part of the improvement plans come from actually like city comments or third-party reviewer comments. So as a response to that, we have to tweak the plans to make sure that we're compliant with state code, and no different than what we would do to review compliance with municipal codes. So that's specifically what happened with Trower. Of the 6 original projects that were approved at the end of 2021 when I came on board, Trower is right in the middle. We've completed 2, Trower and Corderos and Nash Meso went out to bid together, and then we've got another 2 coming in the fall and the winter.
Thank you, guys. And I do thank all the work that's been done. Just looking forward to getting it done.
Go ahead and open up to the public for comment. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion.
Motion to approve. Sorry, a motion for 9A to reject all bids and re-advertise.
And with that, we have a motion and a second. Just to be acknowledged, we have Vice Mayor Ritchie on the phone. Did you have any comments before we go ahead with the motion? I know that's out of order, but.
No, not at all. I agree with the motion second.
All right, we have a motion and second. Roll call.
Councilmember Stockton? Silva?
Yes.
Chapman? Yes. Wiley?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ritchie?
Yes.
Chair Crowley?
Yes. Thank you. We'll look forward to moving forward with this plan. So thank you very much. I'd like to see that park done. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to items 9B, C, and D.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. As mentioned previously, we're going to be combining items 9B, C, and D, which all relate to 3 different professional service agreements for the preparation of the East of Leisure Town Growth Area Specific Plan and funding arrangements. With that, we'll turn it over to Aaron Morris and Albert Eno from the Planning Department.
Thank you, Mayor Carley, Vice Mayor Ritchie, and members of council. We are so excited to be here tonight to bring you these 3 contracts that will allow us to move forward with the East of Leisure Town Growth Area planning effort. We have the consultant, several of our consultants present this evening. We have property owners that are funding this present this evening, and we have a pretty brief presentation that we're going to get through relatively quickly. And then, of course, we're happy to answer any questions that you have. So with that, we're going to go to the next slide. So the matter before you this evening is a request that you authorize the city manager or his designee to execute professional services agreements with 3 consultants for the East of Leisure Town planning effort. The first one would be to the Dolan Group in the amount of $948,090. They would be leading the preparation of the specific plan. Stantec Consulting Incorporated in the amount of $657,071 to prepare the environmental impact report for the specific plan. And then a third contract with Management Advisory Services in the amount of $420 to provide planning consultant services to support staff with the plan. By way of background, I'm not going to go too far back. It was actually back in April of this year that staff was directed by council to move forward with eliciting consultant proposals to get this plan going. A lot of things transpired before then, but I will just continue forward with the presentation. Just to give a little context, this map shows where the specific plan is located. It's comprised of 3 properties, the Raisins Chen property to the north, Donaldson Ramos just to the south of Raisins Chen, and at the very south end, we have the AMP Children's Investments property. Cumulatively, the project site's about 550 acres. The plan envisions approximately 5,000 housing units of a variety of types. Thank you, Albert. Appreciate that. This is a large project. It will be a multi-year project. It involves a general plan amendment, pre-zoning, a specific plan, tentative maps, development agreements, an update to our municipal services review, a full environmental impact report. So I just want to emphasize this is a 2 to 3 year project. This is not something that will come back to you instantly, and it's going to have a lot of public involvement and a lot of rigorous work, including technical studies, a lot of public outreach and engagement. And again, a lot of that's outlined in the very extensive proposals that you all receive copies of for the specific plan and the environmental impact report. So I think the main message is that we are proposing management advisory services to basically provide support to staff to execute this project. And the other consultants are literally going to help prepare these documents, these important documents for staff. We had a very competitive process for selecting these consultants. We had many proposals and we were able to really get a very good, I think a very good team. I think the most important thing is the city is not paying for any of this with any city funds. Every aspect of this project is the subject of a funding agreement that's already been executed between the city of Vacaville and the 3 developers that are funding it. They are paying for the specific plan. They are paying for the EIR. They are paying for the planning consultant. They'll also be paying for other consultants as specified in the agreement. So everything that goes to the council tonight, if you authorize these contracts, will be funded by private parties and not the city. So yeah, this outlines our process. We were very delighted to get some pretty strong proposals. We believe we're bringing you the very best of what we reviewed as a team. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is the slide that I think we showed this before. We were coming into you to get this process moving. This just emphasizes that this is a multi-year process. You initiated the project by giving us direction to move forward with the RFP process. We have the 3 contracts here tonight. We will then actually launch this project. And right now we're estimating that it's kind of the beginning of 2027 that this project would kind of come to some conclusion. And it's sometime after that that construction might begin. So just emphasizing again, this is not an instant project. This is more of a long-term project. And staff is recommending by simple motion that the council adopt the subject resolutions. There are 3 of them authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute the 3 professional services agreements for the preparation of the specific plan. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you for the presentation. I know there's a lot more details that come with this. One quick question. This is the East of Leisure Town. How will staff coordinate the work that also needs to be done in the Northeast Growth area?
That is a great question, Mr. Mayor. We are working on bringing forward some work on the Northeast growth area. It's a little bit lagging behind the east of Leisure Town because of just the level of interest we have and the support. But we will be bringing that other project forward, hopefully in tandem.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Wiley?
Could you go back to that map? So those two small squares, the Fields at Alamo and Roberts Ranch School site, are those part of this Are they part of these three developers and part of this, or can you tell me how?
They are not part of the East of Leisure Town Growth Area project. The Raisins Chen, Donaldson Ramos, AMP Children's are, just like the Fields at Alamo Creek, they are all unincorporated land that are currently in the county of Solano and not in the city of Vacaville. So the Fields is not a part of this proposal. It is actually has a pending general plan amendment on it that's being processed and has been being processed for the last couple of years. The significance of the Roberts Ranch School site is that the council will be entertaining a proposed general plan amendment on that site. So this map actually shows the three proposed general plan amendments in the area, the specific plan with those three properties, the Fields at Alamo Creek, and the Roberts Ranch School site.
And so what we're approving or voting on tonight will not include any discussion of those two properties.
That's correct. They are not part of tonight's discussion.
And then anything that's not the light blue is just privately owned?
Privately owned and not part of the core specific plan project.
All right, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, I'm going to open up to the public. No one wishing to comment, I'll bring this back to the council for discussion and or motion. I'm going to go to Vice Mayor Ritchie to see if you have any questions or comments.
Oh, no, I have no questions, but just a comment. Thanks. I really appreciate the staff and really excited for this project. I think this is something that we've all been talking about for a long time, ways to really energize that part of town and the Northeast Gross area to all the land that we're talking about. It's going to be really exciting opportunities for Vacaville to kind of go forward. So I'm looking forward to this opportunity. Is it able to do a motion?
There's still some lights on. So,
okay, sorry.
Yeah. If you'd like, I'll come back to you then. Councilmember Stockton.
I want to make sure that we're going to have an opportunity to speak with them in the development of this plan for this area to make sure that they address some of the things that are happening right now, like our water, the fact that CFDs aren't being paid for high density apartment projects, and making sure that we have like the things in place contractually to make sure that we're able to protect our police and fire services that'll be expanded upon in this area greatly. So we will have those opportunities. Is that my understanding?
This project will come back to council as part of a kicking off exercise, but also to answer your question about the public services CFDs, there are other consultant contracts that will be coming forward as part of the package that the developers are paying for, including a fiscal impact analysis that looks at the cost of services, the revenue from the project, and what's needed to bridge that gap, as well as several other fiscal related studies. And that will be part of the ultimate project package.
So if we need additional fire stations or police services, that'll all be part of this plan? And
absolutely.
What type of vehicles and fleet stuff? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
All right, seeing no other comments, it's pretty clear that having the EIR done in a specific plan, this is going to take a while, but doing it the right way. And hopefully that's when we'll have a robust discussion about what community benefit we feel that we need and doing it the right way. So I appreciate that. Vice Mayor Ritchie, did you want to make a final comment and a motion?
Yes, my motion is really to approve. I don't know how this to structure this because we're combining the items. Motion to approve.
By simple motion to adopt all the subject resolutions for these professional services agreements. So that's what's being recommended. We take your motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Councilmember Stockton?
Yes.
Silva?
Yes.
Chapman? Yes. Wiley?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ritchie?
Yes.
Mayor Chair Carly?
Yes. So thank you very much, and it's time to get to work. All right, we're moving right along. Reports of the city manager.
I have none this evening.
Reports of the City Council. Councilmember Silva.
Just two things, like in the early report about downtown, Northside Collective, it moved into the old Tweed Hut. And so that's a pretty unique aspect. So if anybody like has those artisan or any small products that they're trying to sell, you can go there and check out how to rent, different tables or space or whatnot. So it's a pretty cool setup that she put in there. I heard that you stopped by for their soft opening. So I think there's a good opportunity out there for those folks looking to expand their little small startups. Second thing, a lot of us had the honor to attend the celebratory closing of our Police Activities League Junior Giants. So that was really awesome. Special shout out to Amber McCabe. She introduced softball as part of the programming. So that was really cool to see, rather just, girls and boys play baseball, but they also introduced and really were able to expand the services they provided for our youth by introducing softball. So she was recognized Coach of the Year, and appreciate that. Also, shout out to Rafael on trumpet. He played the national anthem with Vacaville PD's honor guard. So that was pretty beautiful too. So thank you.
Councilmember Stockton.
So I'll start off with the important stuff. First, I want to wish my wife a happy anniversary. It's our 19th year marriage anniversary. And I'm here, so I'm looking forward to getting home. On another positive note, I just want to thank staff, Georgianne and Rika, for all of their help with everyone else to get the shade structure put up out at Centennial Park. If anybody's been out there to watch any games or do any of those activities, it can get pretty hot. So we were able to get that done with some district dollars, and I'm very, very appreciative. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the fire department fleet. I was notified that we had 3 ambulances that were potentially out with mechanical issues last week, and I was just curious what the status is with the fire, with the ambulance units, and whether or not those are back up.
Last couple of weeks, fire engines and ambulances. I believe all 3 of the ambulances are back. 2 of the 3 are back in service. So we had one browned out for a short period of time one evening, and got that back up and running.
So do we have a plan in place to have somebody subsidize our ambulance services in the case of an emergency like that, where some of these go down?
We have mutual aid agreements in place, but we're a long ways away from that.
Okay, and I guess my next question is, I think a few years ago, if it wasn't last year, it was the year before, we did like a fleet study where we had a conversation about the age of our fleet and some of like the fire engines and ambulances and stuff that you guys use. But I don't know if we ever got that back, and I'm just curious if we might be able to have staff bring that back so that we could talk about, basically the operational status of these vehicles, what their mileage is, their life expectancy, and, if we need to replace them, how we're going to fund it.
The answer is yes. We did do a comprehensive, we engaged with a consultant. The city's fleet program and the fire department worked together with a consultant to put together a comprehensive fleet analysis in late 2023. As to whether or not that's been presented here or needs to be presented here, I'll defer to the city manager.
We have a plan, and it's something that we're working with to implement. And as a result of some of the budget challenges that we've been having, we've been forced to push things around here and there, but we're working with all the affected departments accordingly and making sure that we address all the priority needs and make sure that we're able to provide the services that are expected.
Councilmember Wiley.
I will say that tomorrow is the first day of school for Travis USD. And so I talked to the police department. Thank you, Chief. Said there will be patrol on the street. And then the following day, Thursday, is the first day for Vacaville schools. So I just encourage everyone to be extra vigilant driving. Cambridge is particularly vulnerable because it's right on, Nut Tree Road, and people stop in the middle of the road and do all the wrong things when they're letting their kids out. So just everyone should be very careful, and hopefully we can get some parent education so that people can drive responsibly around our schools. And so both Fairfield and both Travis and Fairfield both have new superintendents, and so it'll be a good school year. The other thing I would say is that the Play for All Park, I went to the Labyrinth opening that the Rotary had donated, so it was installed. It was very interesting, and there was a nice crowd of people. One thing I did learn, because I said, well, they had just painted the Dutch Brothers shelter, and I said, are those other ones still available? And they said, no. Kaiser has this one, and someone else has this one, and the city of Vacaville has this one. So city of Vacaville, what's our plan for the shelter? And let's get going on it, because it would be great. The other ones look really good. They're all painted. So, all right, great. And then I also attended the Junior Giants. And one other thing that was mentioned, and I hope I heard it right, there was an announcement. One of our PAL people won a $10,000 scholarship upon graduating from high school, and she has to continue to be active in PAL. And I think it was Amber McCabe's daughter, if I'm correct. And it's a very competitive statewide scholarship, and Vacaville has had a winner the last 5 years. So that's $50,000 toward college for 5 Vacaville families because of their active participation in PAL. So I think that's a real achievement as well. And finally, we've had Olympics going on in Vacaville, and I have not been able to participate or see any of them, except this past week I went to the very competitive and ping pong competition. And it's just really fun to see the city workers from all departments playing ping pong and having a lot of positive energy together. So kudos to all the people who've worked hard to make the Olympics part of Vacaville. And it's just great to be in a place where teamwork and working together is important. And from the consultants that were here tonight talking about how good our downtown looks. So I do feel like Vacaville has some issues, like working on the shelter thing, but we really have a lot of positive energy going. So thanks.
Mr. City Manager.
I was just going to say that if you're interested, this Friday we have the department head dunk tank. You can take my spot.
Oh, I'm not a department head, sorry.
How much is it? Part of what I was reporting out on. That I was going to make the final day, the final event, because you get to throw at the department heads and let them.
So you now have the floor.
My turn.
Yeah, so you have the floor.
Thank you. All right, but I was making mention of that, but thank you for coming back today, feeling great to take my thunder. All right, and next time, let me speak prior to Councilmember Wiley, because school opening right here, I was going to speak about the need for our residents, everyone to take heed. The school is opening. Watch out for our children. Slow yourself down. Improve your behavior. And at Payton, there are new markings over there. They're beginning to enhance the area to make it, drivers come through. They can't miss that it's a school zone. And there's more to come. And then I also attended the Junior Giants over at Centennial Park. And it was great to see the parents out and the children and it was 100 and something degrees that day, and they stood out in that heat in middle field throughout the entire, almost throughout the entire ceremony, but it was a great event. It was a great time of recognizing the young people and the growth that had taken place. But just having parents in the community there to show support, that's important as well.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Ritchie.
Oh, yes. I want to kind of piggyback off. I was at the Junior Giants. I did show up late, so I'm sorry about that bit. It was an amazing experience. I'm really just having the energy of the meeting, and the consultants really kind of made me kind of buzz with excitement, because as we approach these interesting times in our state, in our county, and our city, as we know we're in certain fiscal times, the conversations of really trying to activate and incorporate all the different stakeholders, like Visit Vacaville, to down to bid, and to really work on how we can get Vacaville engaged to increase the usage of our downtown. Sales tax is essential to make sure that we are a vital city, and really understanding how vital this project is to engage that. And the conversation with really engaging the urban reserve and the 2,500 homes, housing and retail and sales are so vital for the success of our city. So I love the energy that we have going on right now. I did want to mention, it didn't feel appropriate to talk about it in the last meeting, I think, or so. His motion wasn't right. Like, it didn't feel appropriate. But myself and Silva had the opportunity to be a firefighter for the day, and I was able to get my little plaque on my helmet. I saw it at this weekend, and I guess Stockton's comments really re-engaged me. Said, I think now it's time to talk about it. It was amazing to step in their shoes, get fit tested, and go through the regiment and seeing what they do. And training like Spartans. They train so hard, and all that they do to make sure that when it's time to step up for our city, they do it flawlessly. And it was an honor to be amongst them for a day, and it really helps me understand essentially the difference of wants and needs, like what these men and amazing women need as opposed to what they want, to make sure that they get home safely and we are safe in our community. It was a great experience, and I just wasn't really in the spirit to talk about it the last time, but I appreciate all the hard work they did to make sure me and Mike let those hot rooms saying that we came in on 2 feet. But it is a great testament how awesome our public safety in our city is, that to see what they do when most of us are asleep and how they act in the worst times, just like rock stars. So I really appreciate the fire department for letting me be a part of that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm only just one item to make a comment on, and I want to give a special appreciation for our utilities director, Justin Cole. Sometimes you see the legislation that comes out of Sacramento, and especially sitting on the Solano County Water Agency. We already know that we're looking at all the challenges there, and then all of a sudden there was another one, and I threw at him. I said, what does this mean? California adopts the new regulation for making conservation a California way of life. And ultimately, I'm sure as a city, we're going to have to learn more about it and dive into it. But the point being is that the nutshell of this is just going to establish a new Vacaville-specific urban water use objective, stricter monitoring and reporting of commercial and industrial irrigation use, and more robust reporting of the calculated water objective. And that's just a 50,000-foot flyover, just to say that the city is paying attention to this, but it is another unfunded mandate. And so it will cost the city taxpayers for future personnel to be able to do these new state regulations. And there's more to it than that, but just trying to just kind of give a report out from that perspective. So with that, there's no other comments up here on the dais. We have no closed session tonight, so good night, Vacaville. This meeting's adjourned.
Wow. 7 to 7:15. Is that
1
the
hour.
earliest?
We start